Welcome back to Window on Well Street, a program that shares information about delayed food sensitivities. Sensitivities that may cause symptoms like headaches, chronic fatigue, digestion problems such as IBS, and even ADD or ADHD, to mention a few. I'm Dr. Gabriela Cora, your host, and in today's program we'll be taking viewer questions from patients who've invested in an immunobloodprint, a simple blood test that identifies foods which could be the cause of many symptoms. My guest today is Katie Sweetrock. Katie, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's go directly into her question today.
Yes, this is Tom from Princeton, New Jersey. I've been taught to eat healthy, so I always order wheat. Now I took my immunobloodprint, and it turns out that I'm allergic to wheat. What am I going to do? Are there any alternatives to wheat?
So many people are really interested in being healthy, and they eat many wheat-related products in bread.
Correct. Whole wheat is a very good food for the people that can eat it. But unfortunately, it is a common reaction, and many people are sensitive to wheat. So that whole wheat bread that you may think is healthy may actually be causing your symptoms.
So if you have that sensitivity to wheat, what are other alternatives?
Well, there are great alternatives out there. You can always move to other grains such as rye, barley, oat, and then there's potato bread, there's rice bread. You can use things like quinoa, which is a great grain. It's actually a seed from South America, and many companies are now making quinoa pasta and rice pasta and things like this that can substitute and make you not even miss wheat.
Are there any other bread sensitivities aside from wheat?
Well, wheat and baker's yeast. Baker's yeast is a very common sensitivity. It is the yeast used to raise bread. Many people are reactive to both wheat and baker's yeast because they're commonly consumed, and we are a society that overconsumes bread. So when those sensitivities come up, there are a couple options you can move to. Freshly made sourdough bread made with a starter actually does not contain baker's yeast. So if you can find a baker or use a starter to make your own bread, you can actually make your own bread without using baker's yeast. Other options are things like tortillas. Corn tortillas don't contain any yeast. Crackers, anything that's not raised, even flatbread pizzas do not actually use yeast. So moving to those options so you can stay away from yeast.
So these are great alternatives. Now, some people struggle with bread coming on their table while they're waiting at the restaurants. Any suggestions there?
Well, if you are worried that you're not going to be able to avoid the temptation, perhaps you should tell your waiter not to bring the bread, to bring you something else, to bring shrimp cocktail or some fruit out for you to munch on while waiting for your dinner to come.
Wonderful. Anything else that we should know about bread, crackers, anything that relates to that food part?
Just there's many options available, and they're becoming more and more available as this society has been more gluten conscious. So amaranth is another grain that's commonly out there. Couscous, teff, and kamut are actually very similar and made from wheat. So if you are reactive to wheat, you should actually avoid those as well.
You mentioned gluten. Let's go into that area for a bit as well. Could you comment on gluten?
Of course. Gluten is actually a protein that's inside the kernel of wheat. So the wheat kernel itself has an outside protein, which is the wheat protein, and an inside protein, which is a gluten protein. And it's a very common sensitivity right now. And it's actually also found in rye and barley, and it has a cross-reactivity with oats. So people that are reactive to gluten should avoid those four: wheat, rye, oats, and barley. And there's actually a separate test offered by Immunolabs that tests for gluten proteins specifically.
Is there any alternative to gluten that people can say, well, this I can have?
Well, gluten-free foods are very common now, and they're becoming more and more common as people are becoming more and more aware of gluten sensitivity and celiac disease. So there's many flours available, there's pastas available, moving away from that grain and, eating more of a low-carb diet will actually keep gluten out of your diet.
So looking for that gluten-free
Correct.
package will become very important. Any additional tip as people are shopping at the supermarket?
Just read labels very, very carefully. Many products contain wheat that you wouldn't even think of. Things like deli meats. A lot of times they use wheat in the coating. Things like, a lot of your produce, or not your produce, but your your manufactured food will actually use wheat as a filler. So make sure you're reading ingredients and labels very well.
This is great information, Katie. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
We've got Dr. Michael Parsons standing by with some alternative food ideas. Dr. Parsons, any ideas for our caller?
Oh my gosh, is all this gluten stuff for real? Yes, it is. Unfortunately, we have been inundated with gluten and our bodies are not liking it. But the good news is we are surrounded by amazing gluten-free products. Now, the nutritionist in me has to caution you, just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean that it's healthy. But there are times when we just want to be a little naughty and have something that maybe not be the best thing for our health, but at least it's not going to flare up your sensitivities. One of my absolute favorite things is the quinoa-based pasta. It's a quinoa corn pasta. And I like it because it is the closest thing to regular wheat pasta in taste and texture. It cooks easily. It doesn't get sticky like some rice pastas do. And when I use this with my family, they don't notice the difference. Now there's some other things that I just want to point out to you, such as these marinaras. These are all gluten-free. Don't need to worry about wheat as a thickener. They have chips, rice, crackers, you name it. We've got a whole section of baked goods, so if you are like me and you like to do your own baking and you know, breads and cakes and things, especially when you're wanting to go and contribute to a dinner party, then there are pre-made mixes for you, or they have the individual ingredients so you can create your own wonderful gluten-free foods. So do not despair. You don't have to eat cardboard. You don't have to feel deprived. You've got a lot of gluten-free options here.
Thanks, Dr. Michael Parsons, and to you, Katie Sweetrock.
You're very welcome.
We'll continue with Window on Wells Street after the break, but may I encourage those of you watching who may have a family member, a friend, or a coworker experiencing similar health issues to forward the link below to them. And if you haven't had your immunoblood, please learn more and get yourself tested. Remember, there's a hidden link between what you eat and how you feel. I'm Dr. Gabriela Cora, and we'll be right back.